Well, the problem with the COVID vaccine, I'll tell you, here's the problem, is they have all these vaccines and they recognize that it's going to be really hard to get a vaccine that does what people say they would think it's going to do. So they have been reducing the standards to make it so that they can pass a vaccine no matter what.
And what they think it's going to do is make it so that they don't have to worry about COVID at all.
Right.
Is that what they're...
If you get a shot, you're protected.
You're good.
And that you're not going to transmit it.
Okay.
And particularly, we want to make sure that the people who are vulnerable, so people with comorbidities and fragile elderly, that it's going to keep them from dying. But what they did is the testing protocols that they're using do not require them to show any of those things. The testing, and I'll tell you how it works. They take 22,000 people and they give them the Pfizer vaccine. And they took 22,000 people and give them a placebo. And then they wait, and it's double blind, so the way it's supposed to work is neither the patients, the subjects, test subject volunteers, or the researchers know who got what.
Okay.
And then you wait till 100 people get sick from COVID. That takes a while because, you have 40,000 people, and it's kind of hard nowadays to get sick from COVID. You're not going to have, the majority of those people exposed. So after 100 people get sick, they stop the study and look at it. And then they say, how many of those people got the vaccine and how many got the placebo?
Okay.
And if 50% of them got the vaccine and 50% of the placebo, it means there's zero efficacy and the vaccine doesn't work. Well, in this case with Pfizer, everybody's excited because they stopped the study when 95 people got sick. And apparently 85 of those people were in the placebo group, which means the vaccine appears to be 90% effective. Here's the problem. The way they measure whether you have COVID is that you have one positive PCR test. You have one positive PCR test and you have one symptom. So that could be a cough, it could be a fever, it could be a chill, it could be a headache. And you have COVID. So what they're testing the vaccine for is not what we want to know. Does it prevent you from dying?
Right.
Does it prevent you from being hospitalized?
Understood.
And we will never know because they have geared back the studies so that to make them, as Peter Doshi, who is the editor of the British Medical Journal, and he said this in the New York Times editorial, he said these studies were designed to succeed so that you cannot fail. So no matter how bad the vaccine is, it's going to pass.
Because we want a vaccine. Right.
Everybody wants a vaccine so we can restart the economy. The big problem with this vaccine, there's two problems. One is it does not prevent transmission. That means I can get the vaccine and then I get exposed to COVID. I still give COVID to you and everybody on the airplane.
You just don't experience it.
I don't experience it, but it makes it even more dangerous. Because normally we
would know you have it.
Then I'd stay home and I wouldn't infect buddy. But if I'm feeling like $1 million and I become a super spreader, like, Typhoid Mary.
Oh, yeah.
You don't want that. And yet that's what apparently this vaccine does. It stops you from knowing it, but you continue to transmit it. The other problem is that they're only testing them for a month or 2 months. You're not going to see bad side effects till maybe a year out. A lot of these, injuries that you get from vaccines have very long incubation periods. Autoimmune disease like diabetes, rheumatoid arthritis, Graves' disease, Crohn's disease, IBS. You won't see these or food allergies.
Yeah, it takes a long time for those to incubate inside of the body and grow up.
And what Pfizer's doing, which is very dishonest, is as soon as it finishes the study, it unblinds it so that everybody knows you got the vaccine, you got the placebo. And then it takes all the people who in the placebo group and it gives them the real vaccine. So now we completely are unable to tell whether there's long-term injuries.
It's like covering your future tracks, kind of.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a trick that they've used in the vaccine industry. It's the same thing they did with the Gardasil vaccine. It makes it impossible for anybody to ever know whether the reason they're getting sick was because of that vaccine or whether it was just bad luck.
So why is it that we've become so, like, why is it our government that's giving so much power to these companies and less thoughtfulness to the safety of humanity? Like, who's
Yeah, I mean, the problem is the entire sort of medical cartel is now feeding at the tit of big pharma.
Yeah.
So the universities are getting all their money from sponsoring clinical trials. The regulatory agencies have become are subject to what we call regulatory capture. They've become sock puppets for the industry that they're supposed to regulate, and you see that everywhere. I mean, I've been suing regulatory agencies for 40 years, EPA, and the state agency that, for example, famously in Louisiana is utterly run by the oil industry and is corrupt. But the corruption is particularly acute in HHS, and the reason for that is that the agencies are really part of the industry. So half of CDC's budget goes to buying and selling vaccines. FDA or FDA, half of its budget comes from the pharmaceutical companies. And with NIH, which is the other big agency, they are collecting tens of millions or hundreds of millions of dollars on vaccine patents. So they work on the vaccine at the outset. They transfer the patent to Gilead or Pfizer. The Moderna vaccine was completely developed by Tony Fauci. He hands it to a private group. They put $2 billion of federal money into allowing them to develop it. And then Tony Fauci's agency keeps half the profits from the vaccine. Oh, it would be like, I've sued EPA many times for being a captured agency, but, what would it be like if EPA made half of its profits selling coal?
Yeah.
It's the same thing. These agencies are not independent agencies. They're completely captured. And you have then, all of the other institutions of government that should stand between a greedy corporation and a vulnerable child have been compromised. Congress gets more money, lobbying money from the pharmaceutical industry than any other industry. They give them double what oil and gas. I'm talking about lobbyists. There's more pharma lobbyists on Capitol Hill than there are congressmen, senators, and Supreme Court justices combined. The regulatory agencies have been captured. The press is utterly captured. And that's because in 1997, we passed a law in this country, or FDA, changed the regulation to make it legal for the first time for television and radio and newspapers to advertise pharmaceutical products on the air, direct-to-consumer pharmaceutical.
When was that? What year was that?
That was 97. So there's only 2 countries in the world that allow that. Everybody agrees it's a terrible thing to do.
Oh, and it's half of our commercials now as well.
Well, Roger Ailes, who founded Fox, told me that there are 22 commercials on his average evening news show, and 17 of those are pharmaceutical.
Wow. Oh, yeah, I'm just trying to get through half a Family Guy, and next thing you know, I have HIV by the end of the episode. You know what I'm saying? It's just like the fear, and a lot of it's fear, too. And they give you pictures of like, oh, here's a happy family, but you might have this looming in the distance,
Yeah.
You might have
Kevin
scoliosis.
Nealon said that he wanted to do one of those ads where they list all these horrible things from the side effects, and the people are walking around happy and laughing and playing football. He said he just wants to do one of those ads where people are actually acting out the side effects.
That would be so good. Man, he's so good.
Good evening, good afternoon, and other times. Thanks for watching that video you just saw. I mean, it was okay. But the next video you could watch could be way better. What if you watch a video right now that changes your life? Well, you could. Watch this one. Or watch this one. Watch this one. Watch this one. Watch this one. Ah!